You might have seen a warning saying meeting is now being live streamed on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Good.
We're on YouTube. We're live.
All right. So yeah, we'll get questions and stuff from there, and I'll bring those into this chat. All right. So hello YouTube.
Sure.
Let me update this link on the website so people can actually join us, and then we can start letting people in on the room here, and we'll start saying hi. Just put the baby to bed, and before bed we give her a little bit of her TV time. Awful like Sesame Street kids song stuck in my head. So if you hear me humming, I got to remember to mute myself because I'll just start singing "Peel a banana." Awful. Okay, so people will be able to find us on YouTube. Let's let these people in the Zoom room. You can serenade us if you want while people tune in.
Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're gonna we'll give people a couple more minutes because we are a little bit early. So myself and Rai will just have a little bit of a chat about what we're going to do today, and just make sure everyone's on the same page. Everyone knows what's happening, and everyone knows how these things work. Because there's a lot of you here that haven't been to one of these events before. So
Me included.
trying to do all our housekeeping while we give some people a few minutes to tune in. So firstly, hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. It means a lot that you're here. The first thing to say is that these sessions are really about you guys. It's a rare opportunity because this is one of Rai's first ever kind of live masterclass things. So this is a really good opportunity to get your questions put to someone who is, without any kind of argument, an expert on the subject that we're here to talk about today. As he's written the book on the subject, should I say. So today we're going to be talking about all things circular fifths. That's going to be the kind of main bulk of today. We'll do that for about the first 45 minutes to an hour. We've got basically everything planned out for that. And then after that, we'll have some time to go to a broader Q&A where you can ask Ryan about other things and really anything. But we're going to try and keep it a little bit focused for that first hour. So there's a couple of things that are really important. The first is please ask your questions. That's how we give you the most value. We can talk and go through our scripts and everything like that, but it means so much that you're here and we want to make the most of that for you. So ask your questions. The important thing about those is don't feel like you have to wait for us to stop and ask you for questions. The moment you have a question, just put it right in the chat and I will keep track of them all. And I'll bring them in when it's relevant. So the moment you've got them, put them in there and I'll start banking them. That also gives me an idea of how many we've got so I can try and get through all of them instead of everyone giving them all at the end. So we've got questions out of the way. We've got a little bit about what we're here to talk about. Why don't we take this opportunity now while we're still giving people a couple more minutes, just talk a little bit about you, Ryan, go into your bio, so that might inspire some more questions for people, but also give us a foundation. Yeah.
Sure, so I think there's going to be a mix of people that will be familiar with who I am, some who won't know at all who I am. So I'm Naylor. I am a guitar instructor, content creator, professional transcriber, and self-confessed all-round guitar theory geek. I thrive on sharing the benefits of music theory as it relates to the guitar, and I've been creating content online for about 10 years, teaching a good 15 so years, been online for about 10, and I've created this sort of niche for myself of sharing nuggets of theory knowledge through graphics, animations. If you've seen my work on Instagram or YouTube, you'll be familiar with my approach. And the circle of fifths, the topic of today, was something that I became increasingly passionate about and loved the effectiveness of this thing that gives us so much, which inspired me to write the book that's kind of brought us here today. And very excited to be sharing what I've got for you today and taking your questions.
Awesome. So just a couple of things before we get started so you guys don't get lost. We have a few graphics that are there for your reference that we might be talking about and, we might be referencing. They're on the page that brought you here. So that page that we emailed you, guitarvivo.com/circle masterclass. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just type that in. If you scroll down to the bottom of that page, there's a couple of things that we might reference, mostly being the circle of fifths and another diagram. So just have that in the back of your minds. If you hear us talk about something and you're a little bit confused, it'll be one of those things.
Yeah, Luke, and to add to that, I posted those on my Instagram today as a reference as well. So if you guys have your mobiles handy and you follow me on Instagram, you're going to be able to find these two graphics that we're going to be referring to today.
Oh, amazing. That's even easier. So you don't have to scroll through windows.
Just throw out the phone on Instagram.
So I'll do my little sales pitch, and then we'll just start with the beginning of the Circle of Fifths.
Yeah.
We're here today, and Rye's given up his time, and we're doing all this promo because we've put Rye's best-selling PDF into print format, which is now available pretty much worldwide through Amazon. Again, through that link you just had, you can go there to get a lovely, thick book, full of the diagrams and everything. That kind of takes what we're going to talk about today to its complete extremes, from humble beginnings.
Yes.
So that's what we're here to promote and kind of talk about the benefit of that book. So if you want to get that, that's back through the link, and we'll email you more information on that over the coming days. I'll try and keep my sales spam to a minimum because there's so much information to get through. But I'll have to bring that up as more people join just to refresh it. So please forgive me. Oh, I see some people have it printed out.
Yeah.
If you've I saw you already gave a thumbs up. I'm guessing that's a thumbs up of approval that you.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, okay.
Amazing, guys.
I realise we're not on gallery view, so if you've missed that, there were lots of thumbs up there. Thank you all so much for your support already. Right. Let's go from the very beginning. I know a lot of people will know what this is, will have an understanding of the Circle of Fifths, but I think we need to start with what is it, where does it come from, and then maybe just a little bit about where it can go.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I see some of you have the book already, so you'll be aware of what I'm going to go through, but for everyone's benefit, we're going to take things just from the very top, just very quickly revising a couple of essential things. Right at the top, music, we have the musical alphabet, which has 7 letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Now beyond G, we're back at A, giving us a total of 8, which is 1 octave. Okay, an octave of 8 musical alphabet letters. And the thing is, when we begin that alphabet from the note of C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, we get that familiar sound of the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, when I map that out on a single string, we see what is known as the major scale formula. We talk in terms of whole steps or tones, which is 2 frets, and then a half step or semitone, which is 1 fret. So we find that we have a whole step between the musical alphabet letters, except C, D, E to F, and G, A, B to C. So we have a whole step between the alphabet letters, except between E to F and B to C. Now this fret that we are skipping over is the black key on a piano. The alphabet is the white keys, and what we're skipping are the black keys. All right, and these a little confusing potentially because they have 2 possible names. If I'm at C, I can raise a half step. I'm on string 5, I should say, the A string at the 3rd. This note here could be known as C sharp. That hashtag symbol is a sharp. I've raised 1 half step. And then I'm into D. And then D sharp, and then E, go to F, right? To F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, and C. Okay, so sharp is raising 1/2 step, raising towards the guitar body. Now these black keys, these notes in between, can have a second name, what we call a flat. That is that little quirky B symbol for B flat. So this is C to D. From here I can go to this note of D flat. Okay, so C to C sharp to D, but I can call this D flat and C. Now immediately that's potentially confusing, right? Which notes we name these black keys is dependent upon the musical context we are playing in, and that context we can derive from the circle of fifths. It's one of the unique benefits of the circle. But thinking about notes generally, then we've got 12 notes in total in one octave, and these 12 notes we can put in what I call the note clock. This is the first graphic that you'll find on the website or on my Instagram. And that simply is showing how these notes relate to one another when we travel through one octave. It's like you're on string 5, you're at A. Makes sense to begin at A and thinking about the alphabet generally. A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F sharp, G, G sharp, A. Now I've done one full loop of that circle when I'm at the 12th fret. The double dot is the octave, that same note name, but in a higher pitch. The note clock then gives us those notes on a single string, but it has limited use, particularly if you're thinking about trying to learn the strings. Some instructors say just do that and you'll learn the strings, but it's not, I've found in my experience, not that helpful. What is a much more helpful approach to arranging these 12 notes is in, no surprises, the circle of fifths, which I'm going to refer to as the circle from this point on. And this is the second graphic that you're going to find on the site. On my Instagram, you'll see this. So what we need to do is establish exactly how this is made. All right. The circle of fifths, that's the big clue. We are going up in ascending fifths as we go clockwise around this circle. Now, we just mentioned at the top that C major has no sharp or flats, it's just the alphabet. So that's a nice neutral starting point that we begin our circle of fifths. So that's what you find up at the 12 o'clock position. Now, if we go around, we're going up a fifth. Now C, D, E, F, G. The note of G is the fifth note in the C major scale, and that is moving up a fifth, what we call a perfect fifth. This is an example of an interval. You may have heard of this term, an interval. All intervals have a quantity, a number, and a quality. You may have heard talk of majors or minors or perfect, diminished, augmented. These are qualities, all right? And this fifth between C and G is what we call a perfect fifth. This is a perfect interval. And it's probably one that you already know how to play. Maybe early on in your guitar studies, you have started playing power chords. What is the number that we give to power chords? It is a 5. And why is that? It's because it is a fifth. This, we call it a chord, it's technically an interval of a fifth. All right. It looks like this when I'm on string 5 and 4. That shape holds as I'm on string 6 and 5. Okay. So from C at 12 o'clock, up a fifth takes me to G. Now what we can do with our power chord shape is we can work ourselves around the circle. If I move this onto G, my power chord gives me this note. I'm rooted on string 6 at the third. I get string 5 at the fifth. Thinking about the alphabet, that helps us with this. G, A, B, C, D. I'm thinking it's going to be a D. Is it a D? Well, yes it is. It's the tuning position for string 4. All right. So G goes up a fifth to D. And that I then add at the 2 o'clock position of the circle of fifths. I can continue then from D, use the fingers, D, E, F, G, A. I'm thinking it's probably going to be an A. Is it an A? I can check with my power chord. Let's do it here. D, E, F. This note is indeed an A. Okay, and again, I add the A at the 3 o'clock position. Moving to A, my power chord on string 6. I'm thinking it's E. A, B, C. And indeed, it's an E. Okay, so we're going up this fifth every time and adding it in the next, what I call the segment of the circle. All right, carrying on. E, let's take the octave position on string 6. It's the 12th. Then at the 14th, I'm thinking it's going to be a B. And it is indeed a B. That fret 14, I can play it in the open position. Okay, it's a B. At this point, things get a little trickier. Because if I think about the alphabet, B, C, D, E, F, I'm thinking a fifth's going to be an F, right? But if I come to my power chord shape, I get this. This is B, but F is just right here. That's not the same shape, and that is not a perfect fifth. The perfect fifth is this, okay? This note needs to be named as an F because it's got to be a fifth above my starting note. But it's not F natural, it is going to be, raise the half step, the note of F sharp. Okay, so that's the next note added to the circle at the 6 o'clock position. A fifth above B is the note of F sharp. Then it's at this point where if you look at the circle, I've got another name for that F sharp, the note of G flat. What we've done up to this point is we've worked out what I call the sharp side of the circle. And why that is named as such, we will get into in just a moment. But at this point, we start to enter onto the left side of the circle, which I call the flat side. And we start to name these notes with their alter ego flat names. Okay, so this F sharp, let's from this point call it a G flat. So G flat, this is G in the 3rd fret, so here's my G flat. Now here's a quick shortcut. We saw earlier on that G up to D was a perfect fifth. Now if I go ahead and flatten one of those notes to G flat, I need to just simply flatten the other note, the fifth, and I get the perfect fifth once again. So the fifth above G flat will be the note of D flat. Okay, there's my D flat. The note of D flat I can find up here. If D to A is a perfect fifth, D flat to A flat will be the perfect fifth here. So we add in A flat. A flat is found here. A fifth above that will be the note of E flat. And we just flatten both those note names. E flat to what will be B flat as well. Flatten both of them, if that makes sense. And then B flat to, B flat, and then B flat will go to F. That is the power chord shape. That's where my F natural comes in. And then F, I'm back to C. And at that point, we have traveled through all of the chromatic notes of one octave, and this loop is closed and the circle of fifths is created. Now, okay, maybe saying, so how's that useful? Well, one immediate use that I like to use this circle of fifths for is for fretboard work and note finding exercises. The note circle, we said it's not super useful because it's just working fret by fret. You're never really going to learn the fretboard if you follow that order of notes. Whereas if you take something like the circle of fifths, then that is, it's not randomized, it's a entirely logical order, but you will be jumping around the strings a lot more than if you were trying to learn the scale fret by fret in that chromatic way. So just take an example of playing the circle on string 6. That'd be C, and then G, and then D, and then A, and then E, and then B, and F sharp, which is G flat, and then D flat, and then A flat, and then E flat, and then B flat, and then F, and then C. They're notes that we don't come to very easily. Getting into the sharps and the flats, that can create problems. And if we follow this sequence, then that ensures that we're really getting solid on finding the notes on the strings. And that I would really recommend you do on all 6 of the strings. Okay, so that's note finding. But the thing to know about the circle is we can think of it in a couple of different ways. In that if C to G is upper perfect fifth, we could also take it the other way around and think anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. So what is G to C? Well, it's the opposite. It's actually going down a perfect fifth. So G, or G down to C is down 5 alphabet letters. So that's down a perfect fifth. Okay, so clockwise is up a fifth, counterclockwise is down a fifth. But if you think about it, you can get from a C note, you can get to a G note in 2 different ways. You can go up to it in the power chord, or you can go down to it onto string number 6. Okay, so I get this. Okay, this is the power chord. This is also this C power chord, but G is now my lowest note. And this is a way you might see power chords taught in, the classic Smoke on the Water. I think they use these shapes. These are not fifths anymore because they don't look the same. This isn't a fifth, or what is it? Well, if we think of D as the lowest note, sorry, G, I should say, because we always identify intervals from the lowest note played. G, A, B, C. That's 4 letters, and that is the interval of what is called a perfect fourth. Okay, so G to C can also be thought of going up a perfect fourth. The G to C, if you look at it on the circle, that's going counterclockwise. So going counterclockwise can be thought of going up a perfect fourth. And this is one reason you may see this also termed as the cycle of fourths, because when you take this counterclockwise, you are going up in ascending perfect fourths. Now when we start thinking about fourth, things get really interesting for us as guitarists, because let's consider why. If I'm at C, I'm on this C note at the 3rd fret of the A string. Now F sits in the same fret on the string physically below. I'm going counterclockwise here around this circle. So F to B flat in the same fret on the string physically below. B flat to E flat, I'm on string 3 to 2, it's not in the same fret because, if you're familiar with the imperfection of standard tuning, I have to raise the note on string 2 1 fret to maintain this fourth. But that gives me my fourth, B flat to E flat. But E flat to A flat is again in the same fret. This A flat I can find on string 6 at the 4th, same fret. A flat to what will be D flat. I'm starting to refer to the circle. It's in the same fret. What comes next? D flat to G flat, which is F sharp. Carry on down. F sharp to B. B to E, upper fret E to A. This A note is on string 6 of the 5th. A to D, D to G, and then G back to C. Because the thing is, these guitar strings are tuned in fourths, with the exception of this string 3 and 2, which are tuned in what is known as a major third, G to B. And if you look to the circle up at that 4 o'clock position, you see the note of E. When you go counterclockwise, you start to see the open strings of the guitar. E to A to D to G. Now we get C. Well, it would be C if we were to play right here, but we have the B. Okay, so take yourself back to the 5 o'clock there on the circle, is B, and then we're at E once again. So we can see almost the open strings of the guitar in that, what I call the sharp side of the circle, that right hand side. And how that can be beneficial then is that wherever note you are on the fretboard, if you work across the strings, then essentially you're going this counterclockwise motion around the circle. If I'm at C, for example, in the 8th fret of string 6, then I can be confident to follow that order of notes in the circle. I'm going to get to F, and then B flat, and then E flat, and then A flat will be in that fret above, but then I'm at D flat. Okay, and then working towards the ceiling, it's the opposite, and I'm actually going clockwise around the circle. I'm descending fourths, or not ascending fifths, but the root note is going clockwise around the circle. So if I'm at C on string number 1, as I go up, this will be G, and then there's D, and A, and E, and B. Alright, so this circle gives us these vertical fret references on our fretboard. Okay, so for us as guitarists, that is huge. But we're just scratching the surface, because that is just note names in the circle. Things get really interesting when we start thinking about how these notes are notes of scales. Alright, just before I say, is there anything come up there just before I continue?
Well, we had a question just before you started, which I think you actually kind of answered through what you said. Someone went, as a beginner, how would you suggest I use the circle of fifths to help learn the guitar? I think what you've just done there is...
Well, there you go. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's a beautiful, as I said, a note random. I say it's not random, but it's a beautiful sequence of notes that you can use when working with note finding exercises. You have this vertical vision going towards the floor, you're going counterclockwise towards the ceiling, you're going clockwise around the circle, just making sure you're starting from the right note. But also, what I get students to do is to, when say you're learning a scale pattern, that you try and do so starting on a C root note and then take it to an F root note and then a B flat root note. And that can be the same pattern that you just simply move around, rooting on the corresponding note, or when things develop, you start to think, trying to put things in a vertical scale position, and then it's then changing the scale pattern as you do so.
Awesome. And then I think the other thing is, at the beginning steps of this, is do you have any tips for actually committing the order to memory? Is it just rote going through it, or any handy tips?
Well, putting it into these exercises, you will then gain the familiarity with it. But from what we've just seen at the beginning there is a little sequence of notes you can see on the fretboard to remember the sequence. If we think about going clockwise around the circle, I'm back at C once again and A at the 3rd. Now to go to my G, I've got two possibilities. I can take it onto string 4 at the 5th, or I can alternatively find that note physically above on string 6. So C takes me to G in the same fret on the string above. From here, if I apply my power chord shape, then I'm moving clockwise. So G to D. So it was C, G, D. From here, again, if I go directly up, I'm to the A. and then A to E with the power chord shape. You see what's going here? So E goes to B, B to F sharp to C sharp or D flat, then A flat, E flat, B flat, F, and C. What I call like the circle sawtooth pattern, I think was what I called it in the book, where there's this sequence, if you're familiar with this, is it the sawtooth, am I saying that right? I believe it's called the sawtooth wave. That looks like that on the fretboard. So that's a nice way that you can remember the sequence. C, G, D, A, E, B, etc., etc. Just following that sequence.
Okay, so when you're on the A string, you drop down the same fret, and when you're on the E string, you use the power chord shape.
That's it, yeah. So A up to E on the same fret, and then power chord back onto string 5, and that gets you the sequence.
That's really useful. Okay, I'll take that one.
All right, it is really useful when you think about the next thing that the circle gives us, which is the sense of we call key signatures, and when scales require the use of either sharp or flat notes. We never see a combination of both. It's either sharp or flat. And I mentioned up at the top that the right side of the circle I call the sharp side, and the other side, the left side, I call it the flat side. And the reason for that is because with each step clockwise around the circle on the right hand sharp side, we are adding sharp notes to the scale, to our key signatures. And in a similar way, as we go around the circle counterclockwise, we're going to be adding flat notes to our scales, to our key signatures. And there's a beautiful logic to it when we do this, because C, we said right at the top, C major has no sharps or flats. But when I go to G, if I adopt the notes of the alphabet G major, I'm taking the open string 3, I go G, A, B, C, D, E. Everything sounds great up to that point. But then if I go F, G, something's not quite right. That's major scale, but not quite. There's a problem with that 7th note. We say with major scale that each of the 7 alphabet letters must appear, but the major scale formula must always be respected. So I need to have whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. I need a whole step above this E note, and it has to be named as an F. So what is my option? I have this 11th fret, and it's the note of F sharp, and then I'm back at G. So G major, the G major scale has an F sharp note. Now, you may think, well, what's the value of that? Because on the guitar, we're a very pattern grid-based instrument. We don't need to know this stuff, but unfortunately, all the other musicians do. And if you ever find yourself in conversation with other musicians or trying to exchange ideas, they are working on this basis with the notion of sharps and flat notes. So this is really important that you can learn and recall this stuff as well. All right. So one step round the circle added 1 sharp, and it was the 7th note of the scale, which was sharpened. Okay. As we continue round the circle into 2 o'clock, the D, we keep that F sharp from G major, and we have to add another sharp for the major scale pattern to work. And there's a pattern to this. It is the 7th note of the scale, again, which is sharpened. Just demonstrating that on string 4, I've got D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. B to C is the half step, B to C sharp is the whole step, and I'm back at D. So I've added a 2nd sharp as I'm in the 2 o'clock position. We've got F sharp and C sharp. Okay, and that continues in the same way as I move to A. I'm now going to have 3 sharps, and the note that is sharpened is the 7th, making it G. Carrying on, E, I get 4 sharps. B, 5 sharps. F sharp, sharps. Is enharmonically shares the same name as C sharp, which will have all 7 of the notes sharpened. Now, how do I know which notes are sharpened? It's in the circle, right? The order of sharp notes that are added with each scale is actually in the circle from the 11 o'clock, the F note. The order of sharp notes added is F, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, E sharp, and B sharp. Yes, B sharp can technically exist, and it must for the scale of C sharp major to work. But the circle gives us that order. And the thing, it works in the exact same way with the flats, okay? One step counterclockwise adds one flat note. But that note, it's not the 7th this time, it is the 4th of the scale, which gets flattened, right? F major, if I play natural notes but from an F note, I get... Again, it's like close but not quite. It's like major scale but not quite. There's a problem. That B natural note doesn't fit the major scale. It has to be a B note, but B is here. So what can I do? I have to flatten it. I take it down 1/2 step, and I get the scale of F major. So F major has one flat note, and that note is B flat. Okay? And we go around, we carry that B flat over into the B flat major scale, which will then get 2 flats. It will be B flat and its 4th, E flat. And this sequence continues around the circle until we get to the C flat major scale, which can technically exist. It's the same as a B major, but named differently, when all of the notes of the scale will be flattened. Okay? And the order of those flat notes that are added to the scale as you go around the circle in that way is that B, E, A, D, G, C, F that we saw for the sharp notes, but in the opposite direction. I think I'm making the sign going probably the wrong way, but it's the B, E, A, D, G, C, F in the opposite direction. That gives you the flat notes. Okay? So the circle gives you the key signatures. Each step round adds a sharp note, and it gives you the order of the sharp notes that are in each of those scales. And we're still just scratching the surface. Any questions on that?
No, just some interesting observations. Someone has said C flat major needs an exorcism. A bit
Right,
harsh,
and
C
it's
flat
not,
major.
but that's the good point. It's not really seen because composers and musicians will much prefer to use this alternative name of B major, because B major sits at the 5 o'clock, so it has 5 sharps, as opposed to C flat, which would have 7 flats. Now, what's easier to manage? The more natural notes, the better. So composers, musicians would use B major and not C flat. But for the purposes of analysing music and chords that may be coming out of a C flat, it can happen, then technically it will exist.
Nice. I'll do a quick ad break because some people tuned in late, just to say why we're here today. If you're finding this stuff interesting, you can check out Rye's, well, not new book, newly printed book. So his best-selling book on the circular fifths, The Ultimate Guide for Circular Fifths, which it was without question the ultimate guide. It's the one that everyone references when I see it being talked about, is now available in print, and it is shipping worldwide through Amazon. If you guys found us through the email, it's at the bottom of that page, or you can just go to Amazon and type in Rye's name and the circular fifths, and it'll come up. But I'll email you all links, and it basically takes you through this step by step. But what we've talked about is kind of this first maybe 5 pages, and then there's 175 more about what you can do with it.
Yeah, we've got. I came up with a total of 12 circle facts, and we've covered the first 2, I think, the first 2 or 3.
I think maybe 2. But yeah, so if you want to support us or check us out and take this learning even further, that is available. Okay, I'll hand back to you.
All right. So we've thought about the notes. We've thought about the scales. Things get super interesting when we start to think of these notes as chords. Okay, because what I call each segment of the circle can be thought of as one of 3 things: either a note, a root note of a chord, or sense of a tonal center for a key. Okay, a key is a combination of scale and chords. But this next phase of like circle vision is thinking upon these as chords. So if we're back up at C at the 12 o'clock position, right, I'm thinking C major, the chord of C major, which is the one chord in the key of C major. When we go about making chords from stacked thirds in a scale, we come to C major. Now the cool thing is, we've seen that a clockwise step would be up to the fifth note of the scale of C major. Now, if you've got some familiarity with chords in a key, you will know that the fifth chord in a key is also major. All right, so C round to G gives me the 1 to the 5 in the key of C. All right, so C major to G major. It's a nice 1-5-1 progression in the key of C. We would tend to see that this 5 chord, we could turn it into a dominant 7th. That's what we tend to do with the 5 chord. Fancy name for the 5 is the dominant, and when we make that a 7, it becomes a dominant 7th. So C to G7 is a really common chord movement. It's very common, what we call cadence, like the end of a progression of a musical phrase, a 5-1 in the key of C. But that's not all, because if you consider going counterclockwise from the C, we have the F root note. The F, we said, was the 4th of the scale of C. It's the 4th above C, it's the 4th note, C, D, E, F. And again, if you know your major scale theory, that is the 4 chord, and it's also major. Okay, so F is the 4 chord, and with that, I've got this little 3-segment wedge giving me in the middle the 1 chord, counterclockwise is the 4, and clockwise is the 5. My key of C, I've got the 1, 4, 5. Right? Countless tunes have been made with this 1, 4, 5, and the circle gives you every key, every 1, 4, 5 you could possibly need. And the obvious example thing about 1, 4, 5s is like the blues. So if you're a blues man, if you're into blues music, then you can refer to the circle to quickly get your root notes for your 1, 4, and 5. Let's just illustrate that with something which might be a little less intuitive, maybe something like a blues in B flat, for example, right? So B flat, if you can refer to the circle, that sits at the 10 o'clock position. Now from there, a counterclockwise will be its 4 chord, and clockwise from the B flat will be its 5. Okay, so a blues in B flat, can you see my guitar? Or so B flat is the 1, and then E flat 7 is the 4, right? 1, and then the 5 will be the F. To E flat is the 4, and back to 1 and 5. Okay, they're all there. Those 3 chords in the neighbouring segments, and that works for every possible key you can think of. A major at the opposite side of the circle. If I go counterclockwise, that puts me at D major. Clockwise from there is E. A, D, E is the 1, 4, 5 in the key of E. All right, but it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there, because let's just take ourselves back to C major. It's a very user-friendly key. So back at 12 o'clock, I've got C, F, and G is the 1, 4, 5. If I continue round from G to go D, A, and E, what I get in the circle are the 3 minor chords in the key. All right, I get C, F, G, that's the 1, 4, 5. Then D, A, E, the next 3 segments clockwise, they will be the minor chords in the key. D minor is the 2, A minor is the 6, E minor is the 3. And then one further step clockwise from there, I get to B, and that will be the diminished triad. Not used very much commonly as a triad, but it's there, it exists. So it's 3 majors, 3 minors, and then the diminished. Okay, that's all around the edge of the circle. But what we do is we bring those minor chords into what I call the inner layer of the circle. So the outer layer is what we've been discussing. Inside, if you can refer to the circle, you see these minor chords at A minor, E minor, D minor, in relation to C, F and G. Now what they are is what we call the relative minors. Okay, a relative minor is a sense of the same notes, but we have a different tonal center. So C major as a scale shares the same notes as A minor. The sixth scale degree of C is A. And if we play the notes of C major, but from the A note, we get this sound. Distinctly morose and sad. It is the A minor scale, known as the relative minor of C major. And what we do with the relative minors is we can add them to this inner layer of the circle. So A minor is the relative minor of C major. Clockwise, E minor is the relative minor of G major. D minor is the relative minor of F. It's always that sixth major scale degree. But if we then go and expand our vision and take this 3 chord segment into both layers, right there, doing this, we get the 6 chords of the major key. Have a look, we've got C major, I'll bring this up, we've got C major, D minor is the 2, E minor is the 3, F is the 4, G is the 5, and A minor is the 6. So these, we don't have the diminished there, but that gives us the 6 main chords that we're going to find used in the C major key. And again, as we saw with the 1, 4, 5, this moves anywhere in the circle. So at a glance, I can see the 6 chords, say, in the key of A major. Bring your focus to the A at the 3 o'clock position, and you've got the 1, 4, 5, and in the inner layer, you've got then the 2, 3, and 6. Okay, the chords of B minor, C sharp minor, and F sharp minor. So this is huge for songwriters. If you're looking to start making progressions, this could be songwriting. This can be just creating loops or backing tracks for your own practice. You can just take a glance at the circle and know immediately a set of 6 chords that are going to work because they're found together in a key. All right. Now, this is good for writing progressions, but it's also good for understanding, analyzing, learning songs by ear, because you can come to a song, and if you're able, I must preempt this by saying you need to start being able to hear qualities of chords like majors or minor chords. But if you can hear a chord and establish exactly what it is, then you can bring yourself to the circle and see immediately which other chords you might expect to find in the progression in the song that you're listening to. And the game is to then go and see, okay, say you hear a C chord in a song. It opens with a C chord. So immediately I'll be thinking, this might be in the key of C major. So I look to that 3-segment wedge and think, okay, I'm expecting maybe F's, G's, and those minor chords. But then say the next chord comes, and it's a D chord, for example, then my vision shifts. I'm not thinking in terms of C major anymore because D major is not in the key of C. But look, there is a key in which we find both a C and D major. It's the key of G. So then I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is the key of G major, and you shift your vision. Okay, so this is a really huge, valuable tool for you as you're getting familiarity with keys and chords and progressions and chords which will work together. Anything on that?
Oh, just that I spend a lot more time on Facebook than I'd care to admit, and you see it in groups all the time. Like, I've got this progression, what key is it in? And you'll see all 12 keys written in the answers. You can guarantee it that someone's put at least every, like, a different key. But it almost is like a superpower to the beginner to see it like, oh my, how do you know what key this is in? I've just given you like these seemingly unrelated chords. But once you understand the circle and you can just see those segments, you then like can answer all those questions by yourself, and the amount of independence that gives you and assuredness of what what scale should I solo with? Okay, these chords come from G major. I can solo with G major. The amount of freedom and competence that affords you is just incredible.
That's it. And this takes time for us as guitarists. As I said, like we're pattern based. We don't necessarily come to the sense of sharps and flats and chords and progressions and keys and all this like thing that many instruments have to compulsory study to like go through the grading system for many instruments, and for guitar it's just not the case. So to have something like this to refer to is huge for us. You know, we can get just so much from this. It's just a case of obviously knowing how to read it and where to look.
There's one other thing that I do want to mention, just to guys interested in this, because you and I teach and we interact with students all the time, and we see discourse on Facebook. There's a lot of people out there who, when it comes to things like this, or even the cage system, might, because they haven't studied it, they'll be very eager to say like they'll put limitations on it. They'll be like, oh, that's just this, or oh, that'll just teach you that. You see things about the case system, like, oh, that's just chords. And people who haven't taken the time to explore these things will have assumptions and like downplay it almost to justify why they haven't put the work in.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, if you look at the thickness of this, you can't deny that there's a lot there. So I just want to take a moment to say, if no matter what it is, there's a chance that study of the cycle of fifths or the cycle of fourths will further develop your understanding of it. Keys, scales, modes, harmony, songwriting. If you, even in the case, whatever thing it is that you're looking to study, depending on how you approach it will determine how useful it is and how deep you go, that you will always find a use for it. So that's just a little side ramble.
No, it's so true, yeah. And obviously many people are quick to dismiss the benefits of studying theory and how it can like destroy your creativity and everything else. And I don't buy it. Obviously, I firmly believe in the value of knowing stuff, even if it's just getting yourself to that point, just thinking about notes in a scale and chords in a key and how you can start coming up with your own progressions. I mean, that's huge. But yeah, as Luke alluding to, there's a lot more that is in this circle that is hugely valuable too. I don't know if we're gonna have time to go into more today.
Well, someone's asked, can I use the circle of fifths to modulate from keys? I'll just give a side answer to that, which is because I don't want you to explain it, because then we'll give away too much. But yes, you'll there's a really interesting thing in jazz where they'll cadence through what you've said with like these 5 1s and these going around the cycle. You can target keys by using its 5 to land on it, and if you listen to jazz, you'll hear some jazz players, they'll almost use the circle of fifths like drawing back the bow on a bow and arrow. So they might go, if they're in one, they go to another one. They might go, oh, I'll just hit the 5 and go to it. Or they might go, oh, I'll go 5 5 5 to it. And they'll just go further and further around the cycle and use it to modulate.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can go crazy wild and like jump across to the opposite side of the circle. Or just why that's crazy is because the further away you get from the starting key, the kind of the bigger the disparity, the bigger the difference in the sound. So if you're at C and you jump over to F sharp, it's going to sound completely weird. But what is useful with the circle is it sees these neighboring keys, and that's a little why you can just how initially I created these. I know that the book is not in color, but with the color versions, which you can see, I use the color system to show the relativity, because a clockwise step or counterclockwise step, there's a lot of commonality. So you can more easily move to a key which is a neighboring key, because there's only one note which is going to change, as we saw up at the top, right? So the circle can give you a guide to know which keys are more reasonable, should we say, or more feasible without taking things too wild and jazzy, as it were.
So yeah, someone's asked, can you explain the color system behind the circle? So that's not about like C is red and this is green. It's more about the gradient and the relationship.
Yeah, that was it. So much of my material online, I use red to denote root notes. That's not what's going on with this. It was just a case of the subtle change shows how they relate to one another. Even using in the inner layer, I kept the colors the same to show that it's the exact same notes in those keys. So C is the same key as the same note rather as the key of A minor, so they share the same color. But it's just a slight variation, and you get to G, which is just off slightly orange, and then a little deeper orange, you get to D. So the idea that it's just a slight change as you go, and the bigger the change in the color, then obviously the bigger the change in the scale and in turn the key. Yeah, that was the idea behind that.
Someone did ask me if there's a discount code for people on the call. I forgot to mention, there isn't a discount code, but it is up on Amazon at a lower price for this first week. So this week it's only up for it's up for just like $20. Then next week it's going up. So if you go to Amazon, you're getting the discounted rate for this week. So then yeah, I'll answer that.
Because it's a big book.
Well, it is a big book, and we're still in two minds about what to do with it. We might. So if you look back in a week and it's the same price, that means we've moved some of the appendices to being an online edition. So we might take there's some like workbook type stuff in the back and some different key coloring things. We might to keep the price low. We might take them out. So this week you get the full thing no matter what, and for a cheap price. Right. I just want to get through a couple of these things. They're not questions, but they're just testimonials. We've got a few people here that bought your triads course, and they're saying it's fantastic.
That's great to hear. Thank you for your support.
Thank you guys. And I've posted the link. It's just ryannaylorguitar.com, right? They can find it through there.
Yep.
Okay. Someone has asked, if it's not too long of a story, can you explain why there's a difference between the G and the B string in tuning?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that's a question that we all ask, even as teachers. Are like, why is that? But there are, I know, and Lou, you'll be aware, there are some players which actually play in fourths, which gives you the ability to, like, everything stays the same as you move across the strings. But I think the general consensus is that it was done for ease and the ability to play chord shapes, like the open chords, like the big five, like the cage shapes C, A, G, E, and D. The nature of the tuning as it is allows, I think, for that to be done more easily. That's my understanding of it. I wish it wasn't the case, but it's what the hand we've been dealt, right?
Yeah, so I know.
Do you know anything of that?
I know a few guys that play in perfect fourths tuning, and the first thing I say is don't do it if you want to play, regular pop music or funk music. If you want to play the existing repertoire, because those chords are just off the table. The only reason to do it is if you're an improviser and you just want every shape to be the same across all the strings.
Yeah, and no use trying to find some tabs because they're not there.
Yeah, awesome. So, was there anything else you wanted to cover on the circle of fish before we go to a general Q&A?
Well, we've come across, so we've considered the notes, we've thought about scales and then keys and progressions. If anything to add would be maybe, I think a pentatonic scale is maybe one thing we can add here today. That I mentioned with the key that we actually find the 7 notes of a scale if we work around, if we can see this from, if I maybe go black and white, that'd be a little clearer. So the C major scale is up on here, and we went round to B, and that gave us the notes, and then to that we needed to add the note of F, and then we have the notes of C major. Now the thing is, if we cut off the extremities, as it were, take off the F and the B note, then we actually have the 5 notes of the C major pentatonic. We have C, D, E, G, and A. They're the 5 notes of a C major pentatonic scale, right? So the circle also gives you that. But because we have this relativity between major and minor, the same is true of the minor pentatonic. Those 5 notes are also the notes of A minor pentatonic, but the reference is not quite as clean. The A is here, but still we get these 5 neighboring segments giving us the notes of a minor pentatonic scale. And that, without going into it right now, but that gives us a better understanding then of modes, like major scale modes. Because a nice way to think about modes is coming out of a pentatonic scale. And to the 5 notes we add another 2, and then we get the different modes, and that's what we cover in the later chapters of the book.
Fantastic. So I think given that a lot of people here will know you through your Instagram and through this triads course, we'll give people a little chance to think of some questions or maybe some things they've come across in those courses, just to give them a little chance to get some further support on their learning. Someone has asked, do you suggest any practice methods or steps to internalize the circle of fifths? We did that on a fretboard and a note basis, so you can rewatch this back to the start to get that. Are there things you would do maybe on an ear training level? Do you practice singing it or anything like that?
Yeah, that's something you could do. It's not something I would do particularly in relation to the circle, but singing wise, definitely I would recommend that you do that. Even if you don't sing, just go and do it in the shower or somewhere where no one's listening. But trying to like sing, chord tones and arpeggios, even scales, like starting like trying to sing a major scale is a great thing to do, and then maybe taking yourself, can you then hit, say, the 5 and that sort of thing, and then the 1 3 5 3 1, that kind of thing is really beneficial. I think it's quite a demanding thing to try and sing through the circle, but certainly trying to sing other intervals and common things like scales and arpeggios is huge, I find, for your ear training.
Fantastic. Apologies if you hit this. Someone's asked, can you get the major pentatonic scale as well?
Absolutely, yeah. That's where we started actually. That if we look at the circle from the note of C, if I just add in those 5 clockwise segments from there, I get C, G, D, A, and E. And when we arrange those by their order of the alphabet, it's C, D, E, G, and A. They are the 5 notes of the C major pentatonic. The 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. So yeah, it's in there.
So obviously there's a lot of people here that are doing a triad course. Someone's said what's awesome is to play the circle across the fretboard with triads. Do you have any exercises about applying triads to the circle, or do you play through keys or any kind of...
Well, yeah, absolutely. So there is a section in my triads course which is almost in a sense dedicated to the idea of the circle of fifths, in that what I say circle progressions share a common tone. Okay, now this is a note. What I consider a circle progression is one that moves progressively through the segments of the circle of fifths. Now, the example being maybe the 1 4 5. Okay, so back in the key of C major, I've got C as 1, F is 4, and G is 5. When they are in neighbouring segments of the circle, I know that there will be one note in common as I move from one segment to the next. And that note that's in common, if I move from C clockwise to G, will be the 5th. Because if you know a little about triads and forming chords, you get a major triad from a 1, 3, 5 of a major scale. We've said that that 5 is a clockwise step around the circle. So I can be confident when forming a C triad, here in the root position on what I call string set 1, that this G note, the 5th, will be the common tone as I move to a G triad. So there's my C in a root position, and then I will have G over B, what's called a first inversion, just right there. G is my common note, it's my anchor, my pivot as I change. And that works in the same way if I go to my 4, which is that counterclockwise move, would be the F. Okay, but the common tone will actually be the note I'm moving from. Because if you think about F to C, that's FAC is the 1, 3, 5 of an F triad. So my C note, if I want to go to an F chord, becomes the pivot around which I form my F chord. There is the F triad in a second inversion, F over C. And with that, I get 1, 5, 1, 4, 1, 5. Now I could play that with the same shape, 1. But seeing it in the circle allows me to play the progression with good, what we call voice leading, in a sense of doing as little movement as possible to make sure I can play those 3 triads just right here. And I can carry those rules into the next shape. So here, for example, C, this C note is my common chord moving to F, back to C, there's the G in the middle, and I get my G chord. Circle progressions share a common tone. All right. Now, and this gets really fun. Saying a little more. If you start thinking about playing through an entire key around the circle, so you do a full loop of a circle progression, and that's discussed in the book when we start thinking about the disco classic I Will Survive. Right. That's a great example of a circle progression. But what you can do is literally walk through. Let's think about the key of A minor as an example, right? So A is sitting up at 3 o'clock. So if I go to A minor, let's put it here, and then I move to D, right? I may be saying too much right now. This is C to D minor, the A is the common tone. D to G, the D is the common tone, right? G to C, I'm staying in the chords of A minor. G to C, the G is the common tone to form the C. C to F, the C is the common tone. At this point, I actually move into a diminished triad, and then my common tone for that will be the F, and then I'm back to, in the case of I Will Survive, an E chord, and that takes me back to A minor. That's maybe a little much for today, but that's...
Oh, I think we might have got disconnected. But, oh, Rai, you there? Oh, you're back.
Good.
So yeah, I think that was really interesting. That kind of shows how, working through this material will really give you like such a harmonic understanding in every key. For those of us that aren't quite ready to maybe look at moving around a key, can I put you on the spot here? Could you just play major triads, but the whole loop, and just show us how the common tones work? So
Yeah, sure, exactly. Yeah, and this was actually, I put this on Instagram a little while back. So what you could do, is take a play through the circle going kind of clockwise or counterclockwise, and as you do that, you're doing a sequence of, if we think about clockwise first of all, we're doing a sequence of 1/5s, okay, which is a very common chord progression. But if you do it with the triads, then you're developing the ability to move from a 1 to a 5. So how that works is, for example, I'm going to be at C. I'm coming up high because I know that I'm going to work this way as I move in fifths. So a C triad, for example, be C over E. Then we say that when we go clock, the common tone is the 5th. So this does rely a little on a knowledge of the voicings of the triads or some good solid fretboard knowledge. But then my G is right here. So when the root note's on string 2, that takes me to a G triad. Then the D is on string 3. That's the common tone as I go to D. The 5th is the A. That gives me the common tone. The 5th in the middle is E. I'm at E, and this sound starts coming, and then I get B. And then the 5th is F sharp, and then the 5th is in the middle there. And then I'm running out of fretboard if I take things up here. And then the 5th once again becomes a new root. The 5th becomes a root. Hopefully you're following this. I'm just taking it through the sequence until I'm back at the C once again. There's always the 5th, which becomes the root of the next shape, and that's hugely valuable to start learning your triad inversions. And you can do the same thing in the opposite direction, so always moving in fourth, so a counterclockwise around the circle. So once again, if I begin at C, let's take it in the open position. So C is right here, and then to F, and then the common tone is the F to B flat. The B flat is the common tone to E flat. The E flat is common to A flat. The A flat is common to D flat. The D flat is common to F sharp. The F sharp is common to B. The B is common to E. The E is common to A. The A is common to D, to G, and to C. So that, once again, is a hugely valuable exercise practicing an ascending sequence of 1 4. I'm going to go 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 4 chord in that way.
I'd like to just mention here, everyone who's here through that email that got you here, you'll be able to watch the replay of this. So if you want to watch that bit again, pause after each chord, write it down, see what he's doing, which I highly recommend you do. That's there for you, so don't panic. But
so I've got to be here for another hour trying to explain every chord by voicing.
That's fine. But can you guys see, like, no matter what your frustrations are, if you could do that, if you could play those triads and have ownership of what notes where in those things, how much easier you might find learning new songs, working tunes out by ear, how many things will open up to you just from what are kind of simple exercises that just put you on the spot and make you do some work.
Yeah, and that's a huge point to make, I think. A huge value I found in my own study and teaching and transcription work is the value of knowing music theory. We mentioned earlier on that once you know the chords that come together, you can more easily work out songs and progressions because you know what to anticipate. But also just generally, just knowing how music theory works helps you so much when you look at a player and you look on the fretboard and you're like, what are they doing? I've got no idea what they're doing. But when you've got a grounding in this kind of stuff, you can see what they're doing, right? Even it might take you a moment just to work it out, but you get the broad strokes, the overview, to then more confidently go into trying to work things out by ear.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think there's another question which may be hard to answer, but I think it'd be really helpful for people to know. To learn this stuff is an investment of your time. And
Sure.
I think that when you hear of a new concept, you go, God, that'll take me years to master. Let me just keep on doing my thing. If you're a typical guitarist who's able to practice maybe 45 minutes to an hour a day, how long do you think it would take someone to start seeing the benefits, or maybe work through the book, or to have a really good understanding of the circuit fifths? How long do you reckon that would take someone who's got a kind of normal practice schedule?
That's a good question. And I think it has to be sort of preempted with the fact that this comes to people differently. I think some players will really kind of lock onto this stuff and get it through very quickly, and then other players it takes longer. All right. So I'd say to anyone that is confused by this stuff that don't hang on in there, because it will come. But in terms of it's very hard to say. For much of this, I can only really speak of my own personal experience, and this has come. It's kind of drip feeds in. The important thing is exposure. I think it's always coming back to it and trying to apply what is in the circle, what is in kind of theory broadly, to get a better understanding of what you're doing. There's like this active learning. You have to really think about it for it to kind of come in to fire those synapses. But then you'll find that the thought process is short. You know, you've created that link and you're thinking about it less, to the point where you no longer think about it, right? So everyone gets there. It's just a case of how fast that process will take. It's like learning a scale. Like there are scales you can, or chords, you can reel them off now, but there was a point where you didn't know them at all. Like you had to look at the charts, you had to look at those tabs, those diagrams, and meticulously drill them. The same is true with this kind of thing. But if you just keep coming back to it on a regular basis, then at a certain point you will get there.
Fantastic. There's a really good question that we've had from someone on YouTube, which is, I'll pull it up so that I don't miss anything out. What would be the preferred order to learn all of these things? Intervals, circle of fifths, triads, scales, etc. Do you have an answer for that or a recommendation?
Great question, and it's one I'm often asked, because I'm conscious that online we're kind of drip feeding bits and bobs. There's no real clear sense, structure or curriculum to it. But I think there are a couple of essentials. I have what I call like the 6 pillars of guitar theory, the 6 main sort of buckets, as it were. And I think the big one is the major scale. First of all, understanding what that is, how you play it, how it's formed, the chords that it can create. Of course, our reference for that can be the circle of fifths. We're super confident with the major scale. And I see this in many instructors' work, that people are very keen to move on to modes and all these things because they've heard that these are important, but we don't spend the time to really work on the major scale. So that would be a big topic. And in that, it all encompasses things like triads, because in learning the triads and thinking about triad chord scales, you start to be more familiar with the sense of the major scale and chords in a key. And also then when you're learning the major scale, you come on to things like the caged system or the 3-note per scale approach, where you're learning all these different fingerings. Like I would say, like drill those hard early on and get that really nice and solid. And then it's like from that point, kind of the branches open up. It kind of depends where your interests lie, but always along the way, I would say big one is to get, everyone says it, but it's true, like get learning songs by ear as quickly, music by ear, get transcribing, because that's your biggest teacher, all right? It's learning music, learning other people's ideas and songs is like the best way that you can really learn stuff. So get onto that as soon as you can. Hope that helps.
Fantastic. We'll kind of draw this thing to a close soon. So we've had one question, which might be a nice way for us to just tie some stuff together, which is someone who's bought all of your books. Is there a recommended learning path for those, or an order for those? And then where can we find these books, and what else have you got out there? Tell us everything.
Sure, yeah. So I came up with a study path. I must be honest, these books and courses were created as the idea came to me. I didn't really have a clear curriculum structure in mind, but certainly a starting point if you're just getting started would be my theory course. It's my first release, Guitar Up Buses Essential Theory. That's a great place to get started. It touches upon the circle of fifths there. I like to accompany that with this book. I think they're a great companion piece to really get going with this. And then with that, following on from there, the cage system I find is like the thing that you absolutely should learn, and that's covered in my Guitar Blueprint video course. And also a really beneficial visualization on the fretboard is the triads, and that's the Triads Inside Out video course that I have available as well. In terms of the other book releases, I find that early on, if you can get into the arpeggios, that's very beneficial. So there's the Arpeggios Building Blocks ebook, and there's a Cage Clarity ebook. The material is covered in Guitar Blueprint as well, but that's also available. And then, of course, I have a chord book. I have a book all about chords, which comes in it relevant at any point. So that can be read whatever level you are at. And all of these are found in my online store. It is shop.rynaylorguitar.com is where you can find all my teaching materials.
Awesome. And I just want to say, anyone who's found this masterclass through us, check out Rye's Instagram, because it's a work of art. Just anyway, you really have a great way of visually representing information and all of the stuff, which is so helpful and completely underrated in the education sphere. So thank you for putting all that time in and creating those awesome graphics. But yeah, you got...
No, it's a labor of love. We're going to say it's, as I mentioned, I've put it in my bio, it's like design was always a real love of mine, and to combine that with my other love music is it's like the perfect job for me, really. So I'm very happy to do it.
Well, especially I'm a visual learner. I learn things best, quickest, and I remember them if I've seen it. So thank you for the hours you've put in. Personally, I have to thank you. And yeah, guys, go follow him. And you'll be able to stay up to date with new things. Because as you
Absolutely.
can see, Rye is a fantastic communicator and a very thoughtful educator. That's why we've partnered with him. So yes, check him out and stay tuned. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Rye, thank you so much for... Oh, we've had some people raise their hands. I don't know if they want to type some questions or if they're just saying, oh, they're clapping. Okay, they're clapping.
Thumbs up. I've seen some thumbs up. Thank you very much.
I panicked. I thought we were going to have an influx of questions. Right. Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for giving up your Sunday evening. Thank you to all the people who've said they've bought the book. Even if you can't buy the book, that's fine. Thank you for being here. It's been amazing. It's been fun. Ryan, do you want to say anything?
Just seeing, this is a first for me. I'm seeing faces, I'm seeing thumbs up, and it's great. It's been a real joy to do this, and I must do this more often. So thank you, Luke, for the inspiration, and I hope you've enjoyed the session and found it beneficial.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. And we'll keep you posted with more information, and we'll email you cool free things, and we'll hopefully see you all soon.